kaschit dukh bhag bhavet. So today we are talking about man. Mind, as we call it in English, is the most sophisticated machinery or equipment that exists in this universe. Actually, the man, Sanskrit word man, is the root of manushya. It's also the root of manav. It's also the root of man in English and mind in English. We are called manushya because of mind. The animal kingdom does not have mind. We have mind, and that is why we are called manushya. So we can imagine uh, the importance of this instrument that is available to us in at our disposal. In our last discussion, we talked about the fact that we are all divine. Each one of us is divine. The consciousness is part of human divinity. And that is what we ultimately want to reach in our final stages of our life. And that is the source of all the pleasures. But mind is the most significant instrument available to us to achieve that process. And therefore, let us understand this little bit more in more detail today. Firstly, as we know, mind is the fastest traveling equipment in this universe. Within a fraction of a second, you can go to moon and the sun and the stars anywhere in this universe. Secondly, this is the only instrument which can go back in time. Nothing can go back in time, but mind can take you back in time. Sitting right here, you can go in your childhood and see how you were in your childhood. Then mind is also what we call storage of our life, not only this life, but many lives. It's the storehouse. It's the storehouse of all the memories, all the things which we have done in this lifetime and in the past lifetimes. Like in the house, we have many things and we don't want things, we put them in the store. Similarly, the conscious mind, the mind which we are using on for day-to-day activities, that is looking after the current things. But all the things which we discard, they go back to our subconscious mind and they are stored there systematically. It's exactly like an iceberg. When an iceberg is floating on the ocean, you can only see approximately 1/10 of the iceberg on the top of the ocean. 90% is below the ocean. Similarly, when we talk about mind, the conscious mind is even less than 10%. More than 90% is your unconscious mind where all the things are stored. That is why mind is also the seed of our birth. I think I touched this briefly in one of the sessions that at the time of death, the subtle part of mind with all the balance of our actions, subtle part of our senses live along with human soul at the time of death. And that seed which goes out of our body at the time of death, it becomes the cause of the next birth. And the primary cause in this is the mind, man. All the things which remain unfinished, which are in the form of a seed in the mind, they fructify and they need to fructify in our next birth. That's how it works. In Sanskrit, they also call it Manomaya Kosh. You see, the body is called Annamaya Kosh, and the pranic energy, the vital energy in our body is called Pranamaya Kosh. And this is called Manomaya Kosh. Now, mind has been interpreted in two different ways in Indian philosophy. One is only mind, and second is mind along with intellect and ego. And some people even put chit. They say it is part of the antakaran, which has four facets. That is mind, buddhi, man, buddhi, ahankar, and chit. These are the four elements of the antakaran. So some people say that mind is all the four. Some people say mind is all alone. But today in our discussion, we are confining mind all alone. Intellect is different, ego is different, chit is different. And that is how we analyze the human constitution in our first discussion. So this is an instrument. Firstly, it is not visible. It is not sensible. Not only not visible, it's not sensible. You cannot see it, you cannot touch it, you cannot smell it, you cannot taste it. Because though it is in Vedic parlance, it is physical, but it is beyond the reach of sense organs. And that is the beauty of mind. When you approach a modern scientist, he will not be able to tell you anything about mind because he can tell you things which are physical. So he can tell you about brain, he can tell you about neurons inside the brain, but he cannot tell you about the mind itself, because the science does not uh, uh, able to, or is not able to understand mind because it's not in physical form. Because science only studies which that existence which is physical. So this is the mystery of the mind to start with. Now we have a very famous Upanishad called Brahma Bindu Upanishad. The very second verse of that Upanishad reads like this: Mana evam manushyanam karanam bandhu mokshayo bandhai visyasaktam mukta nirvasyam stukram. It means that mind is the root cause of your bondage and liberation in this world. If mind is dedicated to the pleasure of senses and sense organs, then it becomes the cause of your bondage. If you can take out of the all the sense objects, then it becomes the cause of your liberation. Now here I would also like to explain this word Vishay. You know, in Sanskrit and Hindi we use Vishay. Uh, Vishay we also use to for a subject in the classroom. This is very interesting word because it comes from vish. Vish means poison, and Vishay means if you get addicted to an object of the sense. For example, somebody gets addicted to alcohol. Now that is an addiction. Or you get addicted to a film, or you get addicted to a woman, or you get addicted to, for example, a particular variety of food. Now that is all called Vishay in Sanskrit parlance. And it is called Vish because once you get addicted to that, it becomes like a poison in your life. So we'll discuss that in little later in more detail. But fundamentally, the word Vishaya comes from Vish, which means that anything which you get attached to or addicted to, it becomes the source of poison for your life. And that is why it is called Visaya. This word you will see in many of the Indian writings. In this slok also they talk about बंधाय विषयासक्तम. विषय के शक्ति मतलब विषय के साथ आप जुड़ गए. If you get attached to the विषय, then you are in bondage. And if you can keep yourself aside from these विषय, then you are liberated. The second important point of mind is it's a mirror. It is a mirror of our entire life. If you keep it clean, no dust around it, you can see your face very neatly, nicely. But if it has a lot of dust on it, then your face, your image will be distorted. And that is the task mind does. Whenever you want to look into yourself, you can look into yourself very nicely if the mind is clean. If it is not clean, you cannot see it properly. Let me give you an example to explain this. For example, we have used to have an ink bottle in the past. Now, ink bottle has ink black or blue, whatever. You take the ink out, still there is some blue or black color left inside. So you put water into that, clean it again, some ink will come out. Again you clean it, some more ink will come out. And finally a stage will come when there would be only water which will come out. Now that is the state of mind when it is clean, when there is no ink inside it. Then no ink will come, whatever you put, it will come out. And that is the state of mind where we need to reach in our life to be absolutely free of bondage. So I thought I'll, talk a little bit about full of these, some of these things. Now in Bhagavad Gita also, there's a lot of write up on mind. There's a slok called in the sixth chapter, slok number 6, 5 and 7, all three are dedicated to mind. But number 6 will be like this, if translated in English. For him who has conquered the mind is the best friend. But for him who has failed to do so, the mind will remain the greatest enemy. So this is what Lord Krishna said to Arjuna when he was explaining this. There is another verse in Chandogya Upanishad which tells us that the food you eat, 1/3 of that food is meant for your body, which adds to your body muscles or flesh and blood and all that. 1/3 goes out as waste, and 1/3 goes as food to the mind. So these are the three portions of the food which Chandogya Upanishad says are divided into three parts: the body, mind, and the waste. So you can imagine the whole body is in fact, it's such a huge body, but it consumes only 1/3 of the food, 1/3 is taken by the mind. We also understood in our last discussions that mind is the controller of all our sense organs. Without the unity of sense and the mind, the sense organ will not function. Like I am talking to you now, you will not listen to me unless your mind is with your sense of hearing. There are many occasions when we read a book, we read 10 pages, we don't even know what we read because our mind was either in school or in office or in kitchen or somewhere else. Because of that, whatever you read, it was never read. So this is what you call the greatest characteristic of mind, that it makes your life in bondage, in liberation. It is like a mirror where you can see your image. It can give you absolutely distorted image. It is also the controller of all your senses, and it can liberate all your senses. So these are some of the great characteristics of human mind. Now, mind can also make a very pleasant life into a hell. Let me give you one or two examples. Take example of Elvis Presley. He was one of the great, singers we all know. He had acquired tremendous amount of wealth. He had great reputation. But if you go into his life last several years, soon after he finishes concert session, he will go back his home, take some pills, take some drugs, and then he will sleep. And when he gets up again, the same process is repeated till his next concert. He did not want to be in his conscious state because he was feeling so depressed. Now tell me what he was missing. He had all the wealth of the world. He has all the prestige. He had friends. He had a great talent. But despite that, because of the mind, his life was a hell. He could not regulate his mind properly. If you look, even Michael Jackson, he had a similar problem. You will find many people who are rich and powerful have similar problems because mind has this capacity which can make your life either heaven or hell. This is the capability of mind. So we must understand these powers of mind. What is the food of mind? We should understand that today. Like we take our food, physical food, which nourishes our body and also mind, but there's another food of the mind which comes. That food of mind comes through our sense organs. What we see, what we hear. These are the two important inputs for our mind, food. Anything toxic. For example, you see a film full of violence. You see a film full of sensual activities. They leave traces on your mind. That becomes your food and that leaves tremendous traces on mind. How those traces are left. There are about 1 trillion neurons in our mind. Those neurons form trillions of patterns. You know, there are permutation combinations of those neurons. So there are a lot of patterns. So whatever image you take in your mind, it goes and forms a pattern with those neurons. And the particular pattern which is emphasized and re-emphasized again and again becomes more prominent. It's like the water falling on a mountain and the drops, they tumble all around and they form a pattern of their own. And in the part where the pattern is stronger, a small little, you know, rivulet forms, and that rivulet turns into gradually into a river or a nala, and that becomes strong. The same way the patterns are formed into human brain or neurons with whatever input we provide. And if we keep repeating that input again and again, those patterns become strong. And those patterns become part of the mirror. So whenever you see things, you see through the prism of those patterns. Everything you interpret, you will interpret through those patterns which have become very strong in your mind. So anything toxic which goes into the brain, it will form those toxic patterns. And anything which is elevating, which is liberating, which goes into your mind, it will form liberating and elevating patterns. So these patterns are formed unconsciously all the time in our mind. And that is the most important part we have to see. Just now we were talking about Sangati, Satsang. And this is what the meaning of Satsang is. That when you go into a wrong pattern of people or wrong pattern of ideas, those patterns leave traces on our mind and those becomes tendencies. Now, in the last talk, we talked about Vrati, Nivra, pravarti. Vrati is that pattern which is formed in the mind. You see, there's a vibration of those neurons all the time. Those trillions of neurons, they keep vibrating along with all the things which come into your brain, into your mind. And those vibrating things, they form what we call vrati in Sanskrit. Vrati is the same thing as I explained, that pattern which forms. And when the patterns become repeatedly deeper and deeper, then it becomes pravarti. We call it pravarti because it becomes your tendency to move in that direction. And that is how your mind takes you in that direction. For example, a person uh, uh, smokes. Now, initially he never smoke. Somebody told him, this is great thing to do, or maybe this is a sign of liberated person. And he saw somebody smoking, or maybe met with some friends who were doing, and he starts that. Initially he coughs and he feels bad about it, but slowly it becomes a pattern in his mind. It becomes pravarti, vrati, and then pravarti. And then this pravarti pulls him in that direction, and that becomes his way of thinking, that okay, I should do this. So this is applicable in every single part of life. Whether you take a person who is uh, all the time dedicated to acquire wealth. Now, a person thinks of wealth. Wealth is important. It is essential for us to survive. We have to have some wealth to keep our body in order, to sustain our body, to sustain, as I mentioned earlier, body is the vehicle of our journey of life. So we have to sustain this vehicle. But if you keep thinking all the time of uh, wealth and wealth, then it becomes a pravarti. Instead of vrati, it becomes a pravarti. And then that pravarti leaves traces, and all your thinking is directed in that direction. As soon as the water falls, it goes into that nala or that drain of pravarti. And whatever comes goes into that. And you will realize that some people, whatever you talk to him, they think only in their own way. You would see some people reading the newspaper. Some start reading with the political news. They are not concerned with the sports or economic or the social news. Some, they will go straight away onto the business column, and they will only look at the business news and the stock market and things like that. Some people go only on the social columns. Some go on the sports columns. So that becomes a pravarti, a tendency of the person based on the past pattern. That is extremely important factor. We must know we should not allow wrong habits to form those deeper patterns on our mind. Whatever has formed already formed, but in future we should avoid that. And that is the impact of satsang, that you do not get into wrong habits and you can avoid those tendencies. So this is the fourth very important dimension of mind. Just to repeat them, the first is that mind is the instrument which can liberate you, which can keep you in bondage. Mind is the mirror all of your life. You can see a clean image, you can see a distorted image. Then mind is can make your life hell. It can turn your life into heaven. Even if you have all the instruments of physical instruments at your disposal of comfort, even then it can turn it into a hell. And then mind takes these toxic inputs. If you put these toxic inputs into your brain, then they form pattern that becomes your pravarti, and then you start behaving in that fashion. That is how the functioning of mind starts. Now, once you form these patterns, it is extremely difficult to change those patterns. A smoker can tell you his story. That is one. A, mm, a person who is alcoholic addict, he can tell you his story. Similarly, a person who is addicted to money, he can tell you his story. These patterns are extremely difficult to change. And that is why once you have a pravrti, nivritti becomes extremely complicated. Once you get a tendency, to get out of it is extremely difficult. So it's better to block it at the right time. Now in Mahabharata, there is a parv called Shanti Parv. Shanti Parv is, it's a profound writing actually. It's a writing of all possible, you know, ethical principles of life, how life should be conducted, what is dharma, what is ethics, you know, what is raj dharma, how people should behave, what is, you know, varnashram. There are a lot of things written in that. In one of the verses in Shantipar, they give 9 characteristics of human mind. The 9 characteristics are that it can be steady, that is the steadiness. It has a skill of arguments, that is the second. It has memory, that is 3. It has confusion, that is 4. It has imagination, 5. Ability to pardon, that is 6, shama. Then it has fickleness, that you know, it keeps changing all the time. It's fickle. Then it has emotions, and it has uh, what you call resolution, very strong resolution, sankalp. So these are the 9 characteristics of uh, mind. Steadiness and fickleness, they are against each other. Then you have confusion and resolution, they are against each other. Then you have ability to pardon, and then you have emotions which turn, you know, make you feel uh, in a fraction of a minute you start crying, in a fraction you're laughing, you become highly emotional inside, you know, those are things. Then imagination, all these characteristics plus memory, all the memories. So this is a very profound text, ancient text full of wisdom. That's what I call, you know, a lot of these Indian writings have tremendous science. The people must have analyzed the mind and given these 9 characteristics of mind. So the mind operates with these 9 characteristics. Which one we need to strengthen, that is important. The other characteristics which is in general of mind is always what you call dvand. Mind is a center of dvand. Dvand is dilemma. It's not exactly dilemma, is not a correct word of dvand, but dvand means 2 sides of the same story. Like a coin has head and tail, we have dvand between sukh and dukh. We have dvand between pleasure and pain. We have dvand between, you know, healthy and ill. So that is the kind of dvand, that dual situation, which is, which has two, uh, you know, uh, two, what you call, ends of the center, which are pulling each other day and night, and, you know, uh, happiness and pleasure, and weak and strong. So that is called dvand. Now, dvand is a main characteristic of mind, because uh, it always keeps you in confusion, whether you should do this or whether you should do that, whether you should follow the material path or the spiritual path, whether you should go for the career or whether you should go for the social well-being, whether you should look after the family or whether you should look after your boss in the office. So there's always a what you call conflict. In Sanskrit, they also call it kim kartavya vimud. It makes you in a situation of dilemma where you don't know what is good to do, what is right to do. So that is the characteristic of mind. Very focused characteristic of mind. It keeps you confused. It keeps you in the state of duality. It keeps you in the state where you are not able to decide. You are on a roundabout. and you don't know which road to take. So you are just circling there, and that is what mind does to all of us. We keep circling in the same place without knowing where to go. So this is uh, what we should understand. Now I'll go to little bit deeper, only for 2-3 minutes more, and then we will have another session on mind, on uh, how to regulate that mind. That would be a very important session that we will do next Saturday. But today I'll go into a few other things. What is the cause of our anger? The cause of our anger, if you analyze, is a desire which has not been fulfilled, or some obstructions have come. For example, you want to travel to Europe tomorrow. Now you don't have enough money, or your friends or wife or somebody say, no, no, you don't do this. They put obstruction. Now you become angry. Why I can't do this? So the every region, every anger originate from the desire which is unfulfilled, or which has been obstructed in the process. That is the cause of anger. All the anger, every situation, you would realize this is the only cause. Desire either remained unfulfilled, or there were obstructions on the way to fulfill the desire. Second, the cause of greed. Why do we become greedy? The main cause of greed is again desire. The fulfilled desire, if you satisfy one desire, you feel happy, and then it gives rise to two more desires, or a desire which is higher in dimension. And this is how it keeps prolonging. Like a smoker smokes one cigarette, and then a two, and then three and four, and it continues further down. A drunkard takes one pack of whiskey, and then two, and then three and four. It keeps continuing in that direction. A person who is interested in money, he wants to earn 1 lakh, and then 2 lakh, and then 10 lakhs, and then 1 crore, and then 1 arab, like that. So this greed comes out of satisfied desire. Once the desire is satisfied, it gives rise to greed, and then it continues all the time, because you remain absolutely what you call, in Sanskrit there's a word called otprot. You become completely surrounded by that situation. You can't think of anything else, and then your direction is only that particular pravarti which you have developed. So this is, the desire is also cause of greed. These are all coming from the mind, because the desire originate in mind. So desire is the mother of anger. Desire is the mother of greed. It's clear? Now what is the mother of desire? Mother of desire, as we discussed little while ago, is our attachment to a particular thing. We keep thinking, and we like something, and we get attached to it. For example, somebody is getting attached to restaurants. He wants to taste new food all the time. So he gets attached to a particular thing that is called a sense object of eating. And that becomes his attachment, which gives rise to desire. Okay, today I've gone to this restaurant. Next time I should go to another restaurant. Third time to another restaurant. And this keep going on and on. So this is the process. The desire originate from your attachment. And what is the mother of attachment? Why attachment comes? Attachment comes from the pravartis you form in your mind. The pravartis which you keep contemplating of a particular thing again and again and again and again. It forms vritti in the beginning, and then pravarti, and then it becomes deep rooted, and it gives rise to attachment to that particular thing. Any situation you can analyze in your life, this is the process. So mind is, the way of functioning of mind is very important for us to understand. So let's repeat this. The anger and greed, they originate from desires. The desires originate from attachment. Attachment comes from continuous or regular contemplation of a particular object of sense. And that is how this process proceeds. And once the anger, if you become angry and somebody, disturbs you, that time you lose your, what you call, intellect, your vivek. It's not really intellect, it's vivek. That is the loss of uh, your thinking power. And that makes you actually, uh, you know, you don't know what you are doing in that situation. You are actually acting in total darkness. You can hit anything there. So that is the sign of darkness, you see. When you lose your vivek, then you are in darkness. And that is how the mind can lead you to total darkness. So I think I'll stop here today. In the next session, we will cover how we control, how we regulate this process so that we can get out of all this process. And that would be very, very important. If you have any questions on this, I'll be happy to answer now.